that we've worked on drawing contour lines, now we're going to start adding some shading and shadowing with pencil to make our objects have the illusion of being three-dimensional. So this is a rectangle, no, it's not a rectangle, is it? It's a pyramid, if I can get my shapes right. It's a pyramid, and it is shaded to look three-dimensional. And I used this value finder tool that we created that included 7 values. So we have white and black, or as dark as you can get it with your darkest pencil, which is going to be the highest number B pencil that you have, and 5 values in between. So remember that we're trying to have 7 values on all of the objects in our drawings. So that's our goal for that. So I can use this value finder tool that I made and put it on top of my drawing and check the objects. See how I can put that right on there? And I can make sure that I have all 7 values on my object. All right, so that's where this comes into play. All right, this helps you to see the darks and the lights when you are drawing. Great. Now I have a cylinder here in front of me, and you can, I hope, see that there is a cast shadow on the table, but there is also shading on the cylinder itself. So if you kind of squint your eyes and look at that object, you'll see that the top of this cylinder looks very light. It also has a lighter strip right down the middle here, right? Darker over here, darker there. There's lightness that happens right along this edge, right? Where, because my light source would be opposite the cast shadow. So here's my cast shadow. So that means my brightest part's going to be on the other side. When I look at this top, this edge is brighter and it's slightly darker when it wraps around. It's darkest right down where my object meets the table. All right, so what that looks like when I'm going to shade it on my paper, and remember, you can use reference points. So I'm going to hold this pencil up and get an idea of what the table looks like, right, to draw the base, because I'm going to draw from the bottom up, just like we did before. I have to angle my paper a little bit to make this work, right? So if I have this as a reference point, I know that my cylinder comes in like this. I build up from there. Okay, now check proportions. So if I see my cylinder as this wide, hard to get it lined up in the video, all right? If I see it as this wide, then I compare that to how tall I see it. It's about twice as tall as it is wide. So then I'll check my drawing. I made it this wide, so it needs to be about this tall up here. All right, I'm gonna make it a little taller. Okay, and I'm gonna put that ellipse at the top. Remember, it's not a circle, it's an ellipse. All right, so get that penciled in. Now there is a little foreshortening happening from your viewpoint because my camera is closer to the bottom of my drawing than it is the top. So it's going to look slightly bigger at the bottom to you. But if I bring it up this way, you can see that it's actually pretty much the same width. So now I'm going to look at this object, and I like to start with the dark parts. So if I look at this bottom and I see that it's very dark where it touches the table, and that the line is a little darker on this side, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put that in on my object, okay? Make it dark where it touches the table, all right? Now when I look at this object, the top stays pretty light. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of shading up there. In fact, I'm actually going to take my eraser and soften up that line at the top so that it's not so bold and dark. All right, but you can see that this has a darker value than the paper behind it. So in that case, I would use just a light pencil, and remember to follow the contours of your object. So follow those lines that you have already set up. Okay, so I'm just going to put that in. All right. Let that down just a little bit. Okay. So now, looking at this object, this is darker than what I see at the top. This is all about comparing things. All right. Same thing. So we've got a little reflected light happening here, but this is dark. So I'm going to leave that reflected light in there. And think about the shading techniques that you are going to use, because if you have a hard-edged object, it's nice to use a shading technique that's going to look a little harder and smooth, like hatching or cross-hatching. All right? If I was going to draw fluffy bunnies and cotton balls and toilet paper, or even somebody's hair, I may want to use something more like a smudging technique so that it looks softer. I'll show you that when we get to this cast shadow. All right, so here's where it's a little darker right there. So I am just building up the graphite on here. I'm not pushing hard. If you just try to push hard, all that's going to do is break the lead, which isn't lead, it's graphite, but break off the lead of your pencil. All right, it's dark over here too. I should not look at the screen, it makes me feel backwards. All right, so when I'm looking at this object, I'm going to just compare one part to another. And remember, I'm trying to create all 7 values on here. So use your value finder tool. Make sure you're including all of those. Okay, Leonardo da Vinci said that he painted the shadows within the shadows. So when you're looking at the shading on something, think that even the dark parts probably have some lighter parts for, reflected light. So I'm just going to keep building this up. To get the shading that I see on that cylinder in front of me. Okay, I'm going to add some cross hatching, and remember, follow the curves of the object. If I was going to touch this, well, you can't see it that way, right? If I'm going to touch this, my finger makes a curve. So if I'm going to shade this, my pencil is going to make a curve. All right, I'm just going to keep building it up until it's all done. It's all there. I can also use my eraser if I need to erase out some white highlights or make some parts a lighter highlight. In this case, it's bright right along this edge. So that's what I'm erasing out at the top. All right, so you get that idea. Now, if we move on to the cast shadow, the cast shadow is opposite your light source. So in this case, it's here, and it's pretty strong right there. It's the darkest right there. And I actually have some light coming from a secondary source, so there's a little bit of a shadow that happens here that's harder for you to see on the video. But when I'm doing like Da Vinci said, with a shadow and a shadow, do you see that this part of the shadow right here is darker than this part of the shadow right there? Okay? So and it kind of fades off. So when I put this into my drawing, I'm going to make it like I see it on, oh wait a minute, I know what just happened. My light went off. Well, let's see if we can get that fixed. So when my major light source here just went off, I had a lamp shining. Okay, it moved my shadow to the other side. There we go. Now we'll be able to see it better again. I'm gonna just add this light over here. Whoops, messed it up, my whole setup. Where'd that go? All right. Now it makes sense again, I think. All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna pencil in where this shadow happens. Now you can really see the shadows inside the shadows. All right, and this part right here is darker than this part up here. Okay, so it's a little darker right there where my light sources are kind of crossing a little because I have a window. It's bringing some natural light in. All right. Okay, so because this shadow on the table looks a little softer, I'm going to use a blending stump. You can see how it picks up graphite on the end, and that's okay because this actually creates a more useful tool that way. So I'm going to come in here and use this blending stump to smudge my shadow in. Makes kind of an interesting sound on the surface of the picture. Okay, so you can see how that smudges it. And be careful with smudging because it tends to all become very much the same value, but that's easily remedied, right? So I can compare this, okay? How am I doing? But the values kind of blending together when you smudge is easily remedied by just coming back with your pencil, kind of scumbling or dragging the side of your pencil across the paper so that you can get more of that variety of values even in your shadow. The shadows in the shadows. All right? So you can see that this is starting to come along with the various values, and it is not finished. I will keep working on it.